Hey, welcome to Bifocal. We have a show today, and which we're going to be talking about sales, marketing, but more importantly, we're going to talk about the impact COVID-19 has had on the sales and marketing groups inside companies. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Today's going to be an interesting show because we're going to talk about something that's it's kind of the heartbeat of companies right now, and that's sales and marketing. And we're going to talk about how the COVID-19 has really impacted sales, marketing, the sales and marketing groups within companies. We have a guest today who lives and breathes in that environment. We have Justin McInturff, Director of Sales and Marketing for Concept, who's agreed to come on and kind of walk us through his kind of understanding, his interpretation of what's going on. So, Justin, welcome to Bifocal.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you having me.
You probably are pretty busy right now, right? Trying to bounce back.
Yep.
What's the climate like?
So it's a bit interesting now. Obviously, we're about 12 or 13 weeks removed from the stay-at-home orders and the impact of COVID-19 and the whole pandemic. So things are starting to feel back to normal life, where companies are open to having conversations and trying to figure out what's next on the horizon for them.
Yeah. So how, like, you have these normal sales calls going on, then all of a sudden COVID-19 hits. What was it like trying to make a sales call? Like right at the, when it's at the thick of it, what was it like? What was the tone like?
Well, at first it was almost non-existent, right? There was so much uncertainty where people didn't even know whether or not, their role was going to stay the same or what impact it was going to have on them specifically, let alone their company. So at first it was difficult to even get people to have conversations because, they weren't even in the process of planning or looking to be proactive about things.
Did you feel like guilty even calling people? Yeah. Like selfish?
That's a whole process we had to work through, not just with me, but our entire company. Is it appropriate to make a call, during this current time where you don't know what the impact this is having on anybody else?
Were you running into one extreme to the other where some companies are saying, hey, we just don't have an idea, and other companies are saying, yeah, I'll tell you what we're interested in?
Yeah, and I would say it took a couple weeks for that to sort of shake out, but there were definitely industries where this increased their business or increased the demand for the service that they provided. So after about a few weeks, companies started to get the lay of the land in terms of where they stood and how their business was going to be impacted.
Any industries that jump out that they were like full steam ahead? And
e-commerce, parcel shipping, whether you're Amazon, people are sitting at home now. So what are they doing? They're going on Amazon, they're going on other websites, and they're buying stuff online. Yeah. So that was one that shot up relatively quickly.
But did those companies need sales support? I'm assuming the demand was there.
Maybe not necessarily the e-commerce companies themselves, but the supporting industries. I think a lot of that had to do with supply chain. So companies that did local or ground delivery, for instance, maybe for FedEx or for UPS, all of a sudden they had a huge spike in business. So they had to go they were trying to service, their customers, increase in demand for their customers. So they were scrambling to whether it was
customer service stuff was picking up.
Yeah, and the operational support, I think, for the supply chain to make sure that those boxes could go from your computer screen to your front doorstep in a matter of a couple of days.
Yeah. So you kind of go through this normal, and then COVID-19 hits, and then it's okay. Everything's kind of halted. Then it begins to loosen up a little bit. What were some of those conversations? How were they different than pre-COVID-19?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is most companies were impacted. So they lost resources, they lost people, they lost dollars or budget. So I think people were more open to having exploratory conversations about something that they may not have considered in the past, because now they're being asked to do a lot more with less resources, or even if it's the same level of productivity from a sales perspective.
Were you hearing that a lot?
Yeah. I got to do more with less. More with less.
You were.
Absolutely. And I think it was a real thing because, we saw it here at Concept, and just about every one of our customers had an impact, and almost everybody that I talked to in the industries that we target were getting impacted by this. So leaders were out there saying, well, how am I going to hit this sales goal that I set out to hit in 2020 when I had this amount of people and this amount of budget? Now all of that's been shrunken, right? And so how am I going to get back to the point where I need to get to those numbers again with the less resources?
So I wouldn't say we're on the tail end of it, but we don't seem to be in the thick of it as much right now.
Yep.
Are you getting more back to normal type conversations now?
Without a doubt. I would say over the last several weeks, people are a lot more receptive to thinking proactively instead of just trying to react to, getting their ducks in a row.
Are your sales calls different today than they were pre-COVID-19?
Yes.
How?
I would say from a resistance standpoint, pre-COVID, usually leaders, whether it was sales or marketing, would come in with a pretty good idea of what they wanted or thought that they needed. So they would come in with a direct focus saying, okay, well, I have a bunch of leads, for instance, but they're getting stalled in my process and I'm not converting those to opportunities for the sales team. So they would come in hyper-focused on that specific part of the process. Whereas today, they're more open to trying to figure out ways to improve or be more efficient with the entire process. So they're more receptive to new ideas, whether it's through different digital avenues to be in front of their customers or different tactics to try to go out and get new business. They're more open to understanding that.
Pre-COVID, what would you say the majority of the people you talked to, what was the need?
I would say the majority of the need was, it was business, right? We need new sales, but typically that boiled down to horsepower. I need more people because the people that I have are not covering enough ground for me. So in a way, how can I get my name out there more? And typically it was through a phone call is what most people were coming in to look for. Was phone support.
Today, what's that look like? What's a typical sales call like today?
Yeah, so now people are more open to giving me information about their entire process. So they're more open to saying, well, where do my customers actually live? That's a thought-provoking question that before maybe people weren't necessarily so worried about. They just had in their minds, whether it was through their own past experience or that's the way that they've always done things, they were going to keep moving forward with those tactics for the most part. Now I think people are starting to have a little bit more open conversation about getting more creative to get in front of their customers and not just using the same things.
Are they looking to you now and concept more as a consultant?
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. I'd say people are looking for more guidance and more education and more information.
Are they asking you like, hey, what are you doing with other companies?
Yeah.
What are other companies doing?
And I think that's a big part of it too is given the landscape, nobody wants to lose a step on their competitors, right? So everybody's trying to figure out what the economy's doing, what their competitors doing, what other companies are doing so that they can try to jump on the bandwagon if something's working or get off it quickly if it's not.
How much are you seeing from a sales structure standpoint? What kind of are you hearing people say, man, our whole structure is changing? What are some things you hear like that?
Yeah, and I think it was less, and people share that stuff with us, which is good to know because it gives us a good landscape of things. But I felt like most people were making changes or cuts, or they were eliminating more support or operational roles, whether it was in sales or marketing. So the sales development aspect of it was a piece that got cut. Supporting roles for systems, or maybe if you have a specialist for a content writer, or if you have somebody that specializes in digital advertising, the support roles like that were the first places to go. The frontline salespeople, those companies were way less or way more reluctant to eliminate those positions.
You would define frontline as what?
A sales rep, somebody that's out interacting with customers. Yep.
So they just kind of reeled those people in, and they're working at their homes now. The support roles, those were the ones that kind of got laid off.
Yeah.
What are they telling you as far as plans to bring people back?
For the most part, everybody is under the impression of furlough, and that in an ideal scenario coming out of this, they can get their structure back to where it was. But that's being done, I think, in the same breath of, let me evaluate everything to make sure that when I do bring these people back, or whether or not I actually want to bring those same roles back, or is my money or my time or my resources better spent somewhere else?
Now it's not so much people saying, hey, I'm just going to bring we're back to where I was. It's, I got to reevaluate where I want to go.
Absolutely.
Those are major decisions companies are making.
Yeah. In a sales position in our industry, the work that we do, it's a breath of fresh air, right? Because people are, like this has kind of, I wouldn't say that this has changed. It's not a change agent, I don't think. I just think it's just accelerated a lot of the transformation that a lot of industries needed to go through because people have been doing the same thing for decades.
Are you finding that the structures, the strategies that people are talking about now, it eventually was moving that way anyways? It just now has been catapulted.
Yeah. I think
quicker.
I think a lot of people were forced to go out and do a lot of their own education on things when this hit so that they could be prepared for that type of a transformation or have a couple different tools in their tool belt in the event that they needed to have them.
Yeah. What did you feel like prior to this? Concept's been around for a while. You were selling kind of the same type of service for a while. Mm-hmm. And do you feel like now you're selling something much bigger?
Yeah.
Much more strategic?
And I would say the word that I've kind of been honing in on lately as I'm having more experience and more conversations people is integrated strategy, where everything is kind of tied together and pointing towards the same goal. Whereas previously, sales, marketing, sales development all kind of operated in their own individual silos. And they complemented one another, but for the most part, they worked independently of one another. Whereas today, people are starting to become very cautious or cognizant of, does my email marketing message have the same tone and voice as my sales call that my sales development rep is making? So that
companies today got to make sure every dollar being spent is as efficient and as effective and the focus as possible.
Absolutely.
Did you see in the past, and how does it compare today, were you seeing sales and marketing head up by two different people? And is that still what you're seeing today? Are you starting to see any shift in that? What's that look like?
Yeah, and I would say that could be considered part of that, the consolidation or the structural aspect of it, where those positions are starting to be a little bit more blurred and those leaders are taking on responsibilities in areas that they didn't in the past, whether it's sales development rolling up to marketing and having the same leadership, or sales and marketing together having the same leadership, but aligning those groups, everything related to sales development or new business development, those are starting to become more aligned, it feels like.
Are companies, and this is, it's not personal, but are companies sharing budget with you? Like, here's what I totally spend in my group, and how do I better spend that?
Yeah, so not as blatant as that. You kind of get piecemealed, like I'm spending X on
you
my
gotta
sales.
go fishing a little bit.
I got to do a little bit of math and pull out the calculator. But I would say that people, especially now, it's almost like a point of pride to say, I have to get all this done, and this is the only amount of money that I have. So people are more willing to give up that information, and I think that plays together with the consultative piece.
They feel it's best to get it out here and let me hear what you have to offer.
Yeah, let me get every possible option. If I have, $250,000 to spend on my sales and marketing group in terms of my annual budget, let me hear what everybody else says I should do with that, and then take that information, digest it, and start to figure out what's the best place for me to be.
What are some things that you have to do, when I say you personally or your company, to talk and work with a company, a prospect, in laying all of that out? I mean, is your sales call now go over this period of time where before it used to be this period of time? Walk me through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so we've always, in terms of our process, the most important and the first piece of that has always been discovery, where we try to get a lay of the land from the customer and get a feel for what their process looks like now, what they're doing to try to go out and get new business. But from that aspect of it, I think from there, we're looking at a lot more education now, because people, yeah, sure, you might be receptive to saying, you know what, let me advertise on Google. I've heard of that before. I know somebody or that's done it before and has had some success. But to actually put your money in that as a business owner or a leader in sales and marketing, that's a different step. So I feel like educating people on not only the benefits of that, but what are some of the hard metrics or the statistics over the past however many years that have been, so that I know what I can expect when I do put my money there.
So your discovery used to be maybe this. Now your discovery is much broader.
Which is a good thing, I think, because to me that says that somebody's taking it seriously. They're not just brushing it off and saying, yeah, I know it's important, but they're trying to understand the value and the impact that it can have in their own environment. So they're taking the time to try to understand it better.
Are most of the companies you're dealing with do they have a multi-pronged sales and marketing initiative going on?
That's a good pre and post question, right? Because as you know, a lot of the industries that we work with here at Concept are industrial manufacturing type of industries where you have a team of sales reps. They're out shaking hands with their customers on the road constantly doing the drop-ins and on-site visits. And that's the majority of the landscape. You might have some innovators that are on the front side of trying new things in terms of ways to generate business. But now I feel like people are using those different areas of focus, or maybe not necessarily just having the salespeople on the front end, but is there a better way to potentially do this?
So, all right, here's a question for you. How difficult is it now for you, personally, Concept? I have to believe there's other concepts out there, right? These customers that you're talking to, these prospects, they probably have been working with maybe multiple vendors. Mm-hmm. How difficult is it now? Are these vendors all going in trying to say, hey, you're best to give all of that to me now? Is that going on at all? Or is it still, they specialize in this and they specialize in that, and, let's still utilize. What's that landscape look like?
Yeah, I would say the majority of things are still relatively focused on a particular tactic. So when I'm talking to customers, they might have one vendor that manages their website, another vendor that manages their social media campaigns, another vendor that manages their Google ads. And then for the most part, they might keep their content and their sales internal, and then they might have another vendor that manages their sales development.
So how do you bring this, what did you call it earlier, integrated solutions?
Yeah.
How do you bring that in with multiple vendors? I'm a sales manager, right? And I have a company manages my website. I have a company that does my social media. And then I'm looking to Concept to do my lead development, my new business development, lead generation. But you're trying to push integrated solution. How's that happen?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a benefit to that if I'm a sales leader and I'm working with a lot of different companies or vendors or people to get all of these things done. To me, it makes sense to consolidate those into one place, assuming that the area of expertise and the same level of results can be achieved with that single vendor. So the conversation of consolidation, I think, is a part of that integrated conversation. It's in the past, we might be doing the sales development aspect, and then they're working with a digital marketing agency. We try to work together with those companies and be a part of those conversations so that we know that what they're doing at the top of the funnel or on the front end of their sales process is going to have an impact on what we're able to do in terms of nurturing and qualifying and converting those leads to opportunities.
Don't you get this stuff going on when
all
it's
the
not
time?
Working?
And not to add another layer of complexity onto the multiple vendors, a lot of times companies are using multiple systems to try to manage each individual portion of this process.
So I can't even get the data.
The data's not even in the same place. So those conversations are hard to have when you can't look at how can you, as a leader, how can you step back and say, whole view?
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
All right. Is it best for a company, if they can, to have one vendor to do all of this, or is it better for them to have multiple vendors and not have all their eggs in one basket? Now, this is probably an opinion on you, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say it's case by case for sure. And the reason I say that is because one tactic or one thing might not, for instance, in let's see, I'm trying a good space. Let's say in my industry, the people that I'm trying to get in front of or that I'm trying to talk to are not on LinkedIn. Just for whatever reason, that the industry has not gotten to the point where everybody's on LinkedIn like other industries. It doesn't make any sense for me to go market on LinkedIn if the people that I'm trying to get in front of are not there. So I'm going to work with the company that has expertise maybe in other areas, right? Not the one that is a LinkedIn specialist. So I think it's case by case. Not every tactic works for every single company or industry, but I think you need to be cognizant of that and make sure that the vendor that you're working with, if you're going to consolidate that down, has a experience and a specialization within your industry, because then they know the best tactics to use for your industry.
Are you finding that yourself and Concept maybe are partnering up with certain vertical market, when I say vertical market, niche services that does some part of the lead generation process, but you're now partnering with them because maybe they stop at a certain point, they don't carry it. Are you seeing any of that where you're starting to partner?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, for example, we work in industrial industries, as I said, and there's a firm that we have a relationship with that specializes in writing content for those industries. So they have writers on staff that are trained and specialize in writing content for an engineer to read, right? That might not be our specialty. So it wouldn't make sense for me to try to recreate that wheel when I don't have the same level. I don't have the same level of expertise. So, and I know that that's going to have an impact on the results that I'm able to provide over to the customer as well.
And that firm maybe doesn't have the lead follow-up capability, so it makes sense.
Yep.
Both of you can win by utilizing each other.
Yeah.
And ultimately the customer wins.
Absolutely. It's rare to find agencies, at least in my experience, that are open-minded to that type of a dialogue or relationship. But when you do, I think the customer really benefits from it.
How does concept differ from maybe many of the companies that are out there?
Well, I would say from my experience, and to give you my background, I'm a sales guy, right? So my whole education and career and experience has been in sales. So I tend to look at things through a sales lens. To me, in my background, that means having conversations and dialogue with people, whether it's on the phone or it's face-to-face. What's been interesting about concept and that's what our foundation has been built on, right, is having that phone conversation with our customers and targeting companies through phone prospecting. Things are starting to come full circle where a lot of agencies have popped up because it doesn't take a lot of manpower to put together a website for somebody or to potentially manage their Google Ads campaigns. But it does take a lot of manpower to be the one to follow up or qualify those leads after they've come to the website and filled out a form, or to build out the list on the front end to be able to send out an email campaign. And the competitive advantage that we have and the differentiator that we have is that we can service that. Right? We have the background of the phone prospecting aspect of the sales process where a lot of these other agencies don't.
Can you do the front end?
Absolutely.
So you could provide the whole circle.
Yes, we can.
How would you define an effective sales engine? I'm a sales manager. I'm listening to you talk right now, right? You're the director of marketing for Concept. You guys focus on new business development, right? Lead generation, tracking that lead through the right? You do all that. I'm a sales manager. I'm sitting back right now and I'm saying, I can't just, as we talked earlier, I can't just bring everybody back to work tomorrow. I got to have something more effective. What is more effective? What does that sales engine today look like? What are the components of that?
Well, I would say, this might not be an answer that you like, but I would say it's to be determined because I don't know. I don't know what the landscape is. I don't know what the market's going to look like coming out of this. But what I will say is that I want to try every different potential option that I have so that I can get to a point where I have 6 pistons that are all firing on all cylinders to make sure that my engine's moving forward.
How much of it is dependent on the prospect, the industry, their product, their service?
I think all of it. I think you have to take all of those things into consideration when you're deciding which strategy you want to take. Because if it's really expensive, let's say I want to do a trade show and it's going to cost me $30,000 to go do this trade show. Well, if I'm selling widgets that are $15 a piece, it's going to be really difficult for me to recoup the $30,000 investment that I made to go to this event. So that might not make sense for me. So you really have to take a full evaluation of everything to figure out where you want to start. And I think one of the good places to start is where are my customers, right? And that's the question that you got to hone in on as a sales or marketing leader to say, if you're trying to figure out how to bring in new customers, you got to start with where are they? Where can I find them?
Yeah. It's sales today is it's a lot more complicated. It's not just a matter of feet on the street. Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying. Hey, yep. It's not a matter of just that. We got to really step back now, and we got integrated solutions, mm-hmm. right? I got to step back now and take a look at your landscape, your customers, your environment, your budget dollars, and then let's talk about. But don't you think that's what every company has to do today?
Without a doubt. and as a leader, how can I come to my ownership and say, hey, I need more money for this if I can't prove to you that it's working?
Yeah.
So I got to have a pulse on all of those things, and I got to be constantly evaluating them and making adjustments to ensure that the engine's running at full speed, right?
The engine.
The engine.
I'm assuming there's parts of this engine that sometimes are going to be very hot. It's working very well. When I say hot, meaning it's hot, not overheating it. It's moving. It's good.
Yep.
2 months from now, that side of the engine might be cold, and this side might be. Walk me through your understanding, your recommendation of this engine needs managed.
Yeah. And I was having an interesting conversation with my boss, Jeff, the other day about this very topic. And we were talking about in terms of the analogy of tools in your tool belt or bullets in the gun, right? If you're talking about sales and marketing, the same bullet that I fire today in the same direction might produce incredible results. The same bullet fired in the same direction tomorrow might produce horrible results. So you can have the same tactic one day that works great that might not work so great the next day.
Yeah.
So it takes constant management and oversight to make sure that all of those things are pointing in the right direction for the right now, but also for the
And the bullet I shoot might not be the bullet you need to shoot.
Without
right? So these marketing guys that are out talking, and one of their buddies says, "Oh man, I'm doing this." You can't come back and just do that. You got to make sure it makes sense for your landscape and your environment.
Yeah, it's all fun and positive to talk about in theory, right? But once you put it into practice and you actually start getting out there and executing things and looking and analyzing the data as it comes back to you, that's when you can start to make big time changes.
I use the analogy of a faucet. Okay, sometimes I need hot water, and so I turn hot on. Sometimes I need cold water, I turn cold water. Sometimes I need a balance. And so you're constantly tweaking. And I think that's the thing moving forward for me that I believe companies have to understand moving forward is it's not a turn off, turn on. Oh, I need sales for the next 3 months. Let's turn it on. Oh, I got enough, turn it. It's not that. It's constantly tweaking. And just because something maybe isn't working doesn't mean your strategy's wrong. Doesn't mean that at all. You didn't know that until you tried this, right? And so I think that's probably a big thing moving forward companies have to understand is it's not a matter of just putting people in place or a process in place. It's got to constantly be evaluated and managed. You agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think the other part of that is you have to manage.
If you didn't agree with it, would you tell me?
Absolutely, I would tell you.
You would say, no, I don't agree with it?
Yeah, I'm not, I just don't go along with things to say.
I just wanted to make sure
you can rest assured on that.
All right.
Well, I was already moving to a different topic, so
all right.
build upon that topic. I mean, because I do believe that. I think, and this is something that I've learned. As I said, I tend to look at things through a sales lens because that's what my background is. But over the past 8 weeks or 6 weeks or so, I've had an opportunity to go build out a sales development aspect of my team so that, I have people on the front lines that are calling to qualify and clean up my database, identify decision makers, and start to have that preliminary conversation of introducing concept and who we are. That's that needs to be managed and evaluated completely differently than a salesperson needs to be managed, right? Each piece of that puzzle, your marketing piece needs to be evaluated with different metrics than your sales piece, with different metrics than your sales development piece. So for me, it was hard for me to reset my mind out of that strictly sales-minded focus to say that, okay, I don't need my sales development team to generate all the way to new customers, right? I need to pass that off to my sales team. So what metrics can I hone in on at that transition stage?
I'm assuming your career, and I'm not assuming this, but I mean your career's been in sales for, you said, it's been your education's in sales and your career's in sales. I'm assuming that a big portion of that was strictly sales. You probably didn't even deal with marketing much. Not the case today, isn't it?
No, it's not.
How are you seeing marketing and sales today?
Yeah, so sales and marketing are communicating a lot more together. So, for example, if we're working on a campaign that we want to send out to a specific market about, CRM implementations or Salesforce implementations, I need to make sure that my sales development reps and my sales reps know exactly what that message is and the goal of that campaign, because they're going to be the ones that are following up the downstream conversations with those people. So I need the message and the tone to be the same all the way through that process, even though 3 different groups are touching it.
What are things you are relying on marketing for?
I'm relying on marketing for content, creativity, and then the daily oversight and management and execution of campaigns that we have running from a digital perspective.
Campaigns. Everyone hears the term, okay, and everyone probably has their own kind of understanding of what it is. Walk me through campaign. Tell me what you mean by that, why it's important.
Yeah, so that ties into the integrated piece. So from a campaign perspective, I'm running a campaign right now targeted at people rebounding from COVID that maybe had to eliminate their administrative support for Salesforce.com, their CRM. So I have a database of people that I know use Salesforce.com. So I have a campaign targeting those people to try to get an understanding of did they lose resources and they're looking to build out a new strategy, but they don't have an admin to help them build it out in Salesforce. We can be the execution piece of that as an outsourced partner without the overhead of hiring on that position.
Do you have multiple campaigns going on at one time?
Absolutely.
Why do you have multiple?
Because I need to be going after multiple different types of customers. I need to be firing a lot of bullets, whether it's for a different service offering or for a different industry. And I need to have different campaigns because that same message doesn't work or isn't impactful to somebody else.
Yeah. It's like trying to catch fish. The same bait doesn't work on every fish.
Yeah. No, but you might have 3 poles out in the water and plus a net. Because you're trying to catch maybe a couple different fish. You're using different baits, and you might be tight lining one. You might be fishing with a lure with another one.
Yeah. Well, I see marketing. I've shared this on many shows. I was not a big marketer, okay? And I'm not a big marketer personally today, but I believe in it. I think marketing is just another sales arm today. Years ago, marketing was marketing. No one really ever knew what they did. It was touchy-feely, make me feel good stuff, right? Print some brochures, which nobody uses brochures anymore, right? Today, it's you better be impacting sales. And I'm thinking if I'm giving advice to a sales manager today, I'm talking to them. I might be starting first about what's going on with marketing.
Yeah. Because
you need it. Marketing can cover broad net, right? Your salespeople can't cover broad nets.
No doubt.
And so you need them. They got to be impacting sales today.
Absolutely. And I think that's exciting from a marketing perspective is that before you might not know whether or not you're doing a good job or you're having an impact on, moving the needle or pushing the business forward. Now you're expected to, and you have an opportunity to do so.
Well, and there's a lot of mediums out there. You got Facebook, I got LinkedIn. Right, I got all the pay-per-click stuff. Okay, I got all my email marketing, my blogging. There's just a lot of mediums, and you got to be in those. They're ponds. I got to be fishing in them all the time.
Yeah, and the buyer, on top of that, the buyer experience or the buyer journey has changed too. Where there's a statistic that I read recently, or I found, I think, on Topo, if you're familiar with that, but it said that 80% of the education or the research phase is done now before talking to a salesperson in a B2B environment.
These are educated people coming to the table now.
Exactly. And that's why, typically, as I said before, the transition of COVID, most people were coming to me with a pretty good idea of exactly what they needed, and they've already evaluated my content on my website to see if I can fill that need for them. And then in most cases, now they're just looking to say, is concept better than ABC company down the road?
How has that changed you and the sales reps that work for you?
That's a good question.
I'm thinking you got to have your sales reps today got to be a lot more diverse and educated than yesterday.
Yeah. Without a doubt. And because they're having to have, especially in this environment where you're talking about different industries and different products and different services, they have to be educated on all of the different options or tactics in order to make a real recommendation.
Yeah. When you talk about companies are calling in and they're 80% informed of what they want, right? Isn't impression big now?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm assuming a prospect is quickly going to compare you to the guy they talked with ABC company, and right out of the gate, they're either going to buy what you're saying, meaning, man, he sounds educated, or man, he took an interest, or he didn't have any value, right? So now our importance of personnel it just rises up.
Definitely. And I think where people could get in trouble is when you don't have people that are willing to challenge that status quo too. And I think you said this to me a long time ago so it was a little bit of foresight on your side to say that I think we need to start challenging some people's thought processes on what they think they need, right? And take a little bit more, don't be afraid to say, no, I think I know better. And what I found by having some of those conversations is that that gets you a lot further with prospects than just saying, okay, whatever you say, I'll do.
People can't be an order taker.
People aren't looking for that anymore. And so if they're coming in with a pretty good understanding or education of what the landscape is, I need to have my people be 10 times better in order to demonstrate enough credibility to then challenge what you think you've already learned.
I'm the guy you described. If I'm buying something, I research it till the cows come home. That's part of the fun. I'm a hobby guy. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I get on a hobby, I'll research everything about that's part of the fun. And then when I'm ready to pull the trigger to buy this or that, whatever it is, and I'm ready to do it, if somebody comes to me and says, that's not the one you want, let me tell you why. I'm like all ears. Mm-hmm. I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure I got all my data before making that decision. And I think you're right. And I think, for those sales managers watching today, I think they have to be strong enough to say, Jim or Mary, I don't know if they're the right person to move forward. And it's not a knock against Jim or Mary. It's things are changing. Jim or Mary may fit another spot in the company very well, but today I got to have every dollar working as best as I can.
Absolutely. And I think it's what we're going to see in the future in terms of salespeople is you're going to see a lot less people that are just perennial lifetime sales professionals. When I was coming up in telecommunications or in wireless, it was the same reps, but they bounced from one company to the next company to the other company, and they've been doing that for 25 years, and that's all they've ever done. Now, I think what we're going to start to see is a lot of value being put on experiences in different spots of the business, so that then you can bring that knowledge to the front end.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. What about technology? Has COVID kind of shot that right up and catapulted that? And where's that stand now?
Well, I'll tell you, I was reading an article the other day that said from, I think it was March or April 12th to April 19th, Microsoft Teams was adding 1.2 million users per day. So over the course of a 7-day period, they added like 10 million new users to the platform. So in terms of technology, the companies that were set up to be able to work remotely or didn't necessarily have to have everything connected, it was a pretty easy transition. I mean, I'm extremely thankful for Joe and his team and what they had put together for us to be able to just go home and operate, for the most part, business as usual in a different environment. Yeah. But I think that speaks a lot to the work that was done, beforehand to make sure that we were set up to be able to do that.
How much of your sales process required physical face-to-face contact with customers?
Roughly 0%.
So that was even pre-COVID.
Yeah. You're still going to have the certain customers or people that like to see and meet face-to-face in order to build that relationship and that level of trust and just kind of look you in the eye type of feeling. But for the most part, it's way more efficient for us and for the customer to have those conversations digitally over Teams or over GoToMeeting or whatever you use.
All right. Pre-COVID versus today, are you doing more video conferencing?
Yes,
You are, even on the sales side?
even on the sales side.
So pre-COVID versus today, you're doing more video conferencing. Why?
I think people were forced to go to this digital route. So I think people that liked that face-to-face feeling or were in experiences where they had to be face-to-face with people, they want to do that. They want to show and look and be on video conference. But I think just exposure to the technology has opened people's eyes to the fact that, hey, we can do this and I can see you and it feels like we're right there, but we're not right there.
And when it's over, I'm right back to work.
Exactly.
Not living in a hotel tonight.
People are finding a lot more efficiencies by doing that. I think
So you're actually having video conference calls, or you're just having dialogue. These aren't just presentation calls. These are, we're talking.
Yeah, there's been more times than I can count recently during the stay-at-home order where I would log on, wait for a customer to jump on to have a sales call, and they would log in with their video on. That almost never happened in the past.
It's the new norm.
It is.
It's the new norm. How's your outlook of sales changed, you personally?
When I started, and I was at a Fortune 500 company when I started, and I walked in, they gave me a couple tapes or audio recordings to listen to of other sales reps, a couple presentation videos to watch. I shadowed somebody for about a day, and I got handed a spreadsheet with a bunch of companies on it, licensed to Hoovers, and they said, "Go get them, Tiger.
Go sell.
Go get them." That was it. And that was only 10 years ago maybe, and it was start to finish and the management of that customer after the point of sale. So I was responsible for acquiring that customer and for managing the relationship to ensure that they were a repeat customer long term.
Yeah.
Now, as we're talking about, the sales process is could be broken up into 3 or 4 different pieces where you have a different skill set or a different process impacting that portion of the sales process instead of one person being in charge of the entire thing.
Are you still seeing a lot of sales reps that are also responsible for managing the account?
Yeah.
You still see a lot of that?
Definitely.
Are those same sales reps, are they responsible for bringing in new business, or are they pretty much focused on managing an existing account base?
I would say that supposed to and doing are different things in that conversation.
So you're still seeing that group of rep tasked with that responsibility.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it just human nature. If I'm going to spend more of my time where I am comfortable and I feel like I'm going to make a bigger impact instead of the uncertainty of trying to go out and find a business.
Here's the age-old question that I've asked a million people. I've answered a million times myself. Why are they not finding new business?
Because they're not going to look for it.
Why?
Because it's easier to go get the same customer. I think the quote is it's 10 times cheaper to keep a customer than it is to go get a new one. The same thing talks about in terms of your time and your prioritization as a rep is I'm going to go spend, if I have a big enterprise level customer, I'm going to go spend a lot of time with them if I think that if they perennially buy and buy and buy every single year.
I can make my living there rather than going out and turning over new rocks.
A lot of people do that in sales.
So why do you think companies aren't just adopting that, hey, those group of people, they're just not going to, so why am I tasking them with them?
I think the companies that you're seeing that are on the front end of that are in growth mode. They're looking for ways, their focus is new customers versus in some of these other industries or other companies, it might just be, maintain that same level of production or revenue that you've historically done in the past. And we'll figure out through marketing now how to get you more leads to meet with that are warmer, so you're not spending your time going out and prospecting and trying to find them.
Yeah. I asked you a question a while back, and I don't think we even answered it. I don't know if we got off on another subject or whatever, but I'm going to ask it again because I think it's important, especially if the sales manager's watching. We talked about a sales engine, and I asked the question of, what are the components of an effective sales engine? I think I used the example, I'm a sales manager, and I know the new norm's not coming back. What are those things I should be addressing? Where do I start? What do I want to do?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of the process or the engine, to me, in my experience, there's 3 components that we have to look at. One of them is marketing as an aspect. Another one is sales development, and then a third one is sales. So those are the 3 categories or steps in the process that make
so
up
you
that
just
whole
shared
thing.
that with me. I'm your prospect. And I say, well, what do you mean by marketing? I got marketing. What do you mean? What are those things I got to make sure today that I'm doing?
Yeah. So the goal of marketing is to cast a wide net and to make sure that when a prospect is out looking for your product or service, that you are there to be found. So what I need my marketing team to be doing is to be covering a lot of ground in several different places where my customers are looking for information.
Okay. And there's obviously all kinds of
Yeah, you have the social media aspect of it. You have the digital aspect of it. You even have, print media is still there's a lot of companies and industries that work in print media, traditional marketing. There's a lot of different tactics from a marketing standpoint. There's supportive roles, right, in terms of recruiting, marketing to new employees as well. But from a sales perspective, I need a wide net so that when my customers are out there looking for information or solutions, that we are there to
And
be
then
found.
with that, as you mentioned earlier in the show, is there's all kinds of metrics that I got to measure that. So we could talk on that topic for hours, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, so I'm a prospect. I just called you. You said, well, hey, Mr. Prospect, you need an engine. I said, well, okay, what do I need? You said, well, you need marketing, and you need marketing to cover a broad net. I say, okay, whether I got it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned I need sales development. What do I need in sales development, and what's that mean?
So sales development, the way that we use it here as concept, is in two primary functions. The first one is so with marketing, if I'm casting a wide net, I'm likely to get some fish caught in that net that aren't necessarily the exact type of fish that I want, right? So they're going to take I need to take a little bit of management and nurturing and further qualification.
So marketing's
of that
not
lead.
just bringing me the salmon.
No, you're catching a lot of different types of fish in that net with marketing.
Okay.
And so I need my sales development team to have a process in place to take, the 100,000 or the 10,000 leads that I might have down to the ones that are actually a good fit.
And that's a process.
That's definitely a process.
Give me some examples of some of the components that might be in that process.
In the sales development process?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could be one-to-one outreach through, we use a tool for HubSpot in terms of sequences. So it could be a combination of emails, one-to-one emails, phone call follow-up conversations, LinkedIn messaging or connecting on LinkedIn to try to build that relationship and credibility with that lead to further qualify them down the pipeline.
Because some of these leads, as you said, they just may not be even good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them may be good, but they're just not ready today.
Yep.
And so what you're saying is, hey, I got to have a process that's developing these and nurturing these for X period until they either fall off the radar or they turn into something.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It might be a sprint to hurry up and figure out if it's a good fit, right?
Because I don't want to waste any energy if it's not.
Yeah, and if it's a good fit, then I need to make sure I have a process to say if they're not ready to buy now, if they are in 12 months from now, I'm still there. If they are 24 months from now, I'm still there.
Is that a process that customers do well?
No, I would say overarching historically, that's probably the number one complaint that I get, especially from marketing groups, which isn't a surprise, but
because they're generating the leads.
They're generating all the leads.
They think they're generating good ones.
Yep. And sales is coming back and saying,
they're no good.
These aren't any good. Or, and this happens more often than not, where they really just don't know, and maybe it was one phone call that was made, nobody answered, and then nothing happened with it, and it just flew off into the abyss.
Yeah.
And
okay. And then you said the third part is sales. What falls into that?
Yeah. So from a sales perspective, that's where you're starting to get into that consultative piece where I need to have a deeper and more high level understanding of your environment and your business so that I can pair the services that I can provide to you to best fill those specific needs.
And you said earlier, and I agree with you 100%, you said earlier that consultative call, that needs to be with people who know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be the people you had in the past. And we got to be able to make that tough decision if it's not.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a big point because you spent money. You just threw out a wide net.
Mm-hmm.
That takes money. You spent money to go through the salmon and the walleye and the bass, right? And the chubs and everything and get to the ones you want. Takes money. And then the ones you do have, not all of those are a deal today. So you got to nurture those. Finally, I get to sales. So I spent all this time and money to get to this point, I better make sure I'm putting a batter up there that can hit the ball.
Yep.
It just makes sense. So you just shared with me as a sales manager, hey, here's 3 components of an engine. So you gave me something to think about, right? Mm-hmm. Is that something can Concept do all that?
Absolutely.
Concept can do all of that.
Yeah. And that's what, going back to the conversation about what's the Concept difference, is not only do we have the ability to support each one of those areas of focus in the process, but we have some pretty smart and experienced people leading up each one of those individual areas in the company that have seen a lot, used a lot, been out there and experienced a lot to help, bring that high level of expertise to each one of those phases, as opposed to just relying on somebody that might have a baseline understanding of all of them.
I'm asking one more question. I'm that prospect, and I share with you, hey, I have Mary, who's my marketing person. Mm-hmm. And I have Jim and Bob, and they're my sales guys. I think I have everything. Do I?
No.
How do you know?
Because you're missing the connecting piece between the two. And what you're going to run into is that perpetual fight of, I'm sending you a bunch of leads. Well, these leads aren't very good.
So you're back to your integrated solutions again.
Yep.
I think another thing you hit on just a minute or two ago, you said, within Concept, all right? So within your organization, in the marketing side, in the sales development side, the sales side, you said, hey, we have very specialized people in each of these. I think one of the problems smaller companies and even mid-sized companies have, and it's not a knock, it's just a limitation, it's tough to find a person who can do all of that. And now they're sitting back and saying, well, how am I supposed to afford that? I can't hire 10 people, and that's a legitimate question. How do I do that? Yeah,
and I think it's a reevaluation of the entire budget as a whole. And I think you can't look at before, if I needed to increase revenue as a sales leader, I might just go hire 5 or 10 new sales guys and throw them out there and say, hey, good luck, go get them. Now I got more territory covered. Presumably I'm having more conversations with people, and ultimately I should be bringing in new.
Doesn't that seem so antiquated today? But there are a lot of companies still doing that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I would say a lot of the companies that we talk to that's their current understanding of the best way to go out and try to generate new business.
Well, you said something, and I want to make sure I go back to it because actually I was hoping you were going to say that. It's not a matter of can you afford it. It's a matter of let's reevaluate your budget.
Yeah.
And I like to share with people, and I truly believe this, it's about spending what you can spend, but spend it the most efficient way you can spend it. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm spending $10, well, let's make sure I'm spending $10 the most effective way I can spend it, because I need that 10 to turn into 20.
Yeah.
I can't spend 10 and make it 11, or spend 10 and don't even get 10 back. And I think that's the reevaluation for today. I think you hit on it earlier. You said it's a mindset that we got to get through, right? I may be holding on to older people. When I say older, not necessarily older in age, but tenure with a company, and we always did it that way. There's got to be a mindset saying, I can't do it that way. I got to realign dollars. And so some things you're saying isn't necessarily implying I got to spend more money. Mm-mm. It's reallocate what I have.
Yeah, and I think that's the accelerant of the pandemic has been, now I'm being forced to.
Because I
have to. I don't have a choice. If either the company's going to go under if you're a smaller mid-sized business, or I have to produce the same or more level of results with less money.
This might be a, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. This might be an odd way to look at it. We talked earlier about the things you're talking about. Companies eventually were or would move that direction. Whether it's going to take a year, 3 years, 5 years for that, the whole industry to move, who would know? The COVID-19 has catapulted that, right, tenfold. In some respects, it may be a good thing for companies because it may have forced them to do some things that they may have dragged their feet on for a long time.
Definitely. I think it's going to force some uncomfortable conversations that people didn't necessarily want to have because they're afraid of change or evolution. And when it's uncomfortable going into a decision or a new horizon that you don't know anything about. If you've done something one way for your entire life, it says something to say, what I've done, that's not the best way to do it anymore. Now I need to go educate myself on the best way to do it now.
Well, we've been talking strictly sales. As a business owner, I run into other business owners that the same holds true at the owner level. I did it this way in the past, therefore I'll just wait for it to turn around and I'm confident it will continue. And sometimes I think the business owner can be their own detriment, right?
Yep.
They're holding on to the past when maybe the past isn't going to be there anymore. They got to move forward. So I think there's challenges going on at all levels within organizations now. And I think somebody within that organization has to step up and say, hey, we got to reevaluate things today, or we're just not going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah. And in a lot of those scenarios that you described, we have a lot of those conversations because of the industries that we work with and the services that we provide changing and being dynamic. So we run into that a lot. And a lot of times what you have to do is you have to find a champion within that organization that is an innovator and is an outside the box thinker that's willing to sit down and listen to new ideas. And then you work together to help formulate, ultimately, what's it going to take to get my ownership on board or my leadership on board? And typically that comes back down to dollars and cents.
Yep. You hit on one thing and then probably wrap up, but there does have to be a champion. It's not a matter of somebody just contracting Concept or contracting anybody. As good as that company is, or as good as Concept is, if you don't have that champion on the inside that's running and carrying the flag and making sure execution is being done on the inside, it's not good. It's back to, I really like your saying of integrated. It's integrated. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to outsource this piece of it, it still has to be integrated with the piece that I'm handling internally here. Right? So there has to be that champion, and it has to be somebody who really lives and breathes it.
Yeah. And has the trust and credibility within their organization to be able to say, hey, these are the changes we're making and be able to get some traction.
Yeah.
Because if it's a new conversation, it's very easy to say if you hit a speed bump or you stumble out of the gates, it's easy to just say, well, I'm turning that off. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the same tactic might not work today, but it might work tomorrow. And the constant evaluation needs to be there to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time at all times.
So you've definitely seen changes over the last 8, 12 weeks, totally turning the industries upside down and sales groups and sales forces upside down.
Absolutely. I think the days of sales reps, boots on the street are numbered, because if that was the way you operated and all of a sudden you were not allowed to go see your customers, you were forced to start to do some evaluating.
Are you being tasked to do more with less?
Yeah.
So you got to adopt technology more and all that goes with it.
Yeah, and that process has to be which one's having the most impact that I can't touch. How does that still work if it doesn't have everything else around it? So it's not just a matter of turning the whole thing off. Now it's saying, do I put more money somewhere else or less money in a different spot? Or, how do I move those dollars or those resources
Do you feel you have
around?
more dependency on marketing today?
I would say dependency, yeah. I would say I lean more on marketing today than
to accomplish their part of the engine.
Yeah.
It's important.
Mm-hmm.
If I take that 3-pronged approach that you just said, right?
Yep.
The sales, marketing, the sales development, one without the other, it's not working. They have to all work.
Absolutely. Otherwise, the engine's not going to run.
Yeah.
Right. All the engines might not look the same. There might be a V6, there might be a twin turbo, there might be a V8. But ultimately, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be on a racetrack, or are you trying to haul a trailer?
Well, and I think that's one of the big different years ago. Sales reps, I think, really cared less what marketing was doing and didn't rely on them. And it's like, whatever you do, okay.
Well,
I'm kind of in my own domain, and I'm responsible for my own. That's what I do. Not the case today.
Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way, especially when there's a lot of career and perennial salespeople out there where sales historically that's what you got. You sales, you sell, you do the whole thing. So it was easy. Making the transition to marketing, it was easy for me to sit there and think, I could write the same message, or I could do things the same way as marketing, because that doesn't really have that big of an impact on the sales process. And then you start trying to do some of those things, or maybe you send out an email and nobody's even looking at it, or nobody's taking any action on it, right? Or nobody's clicking on my ads, or it's not even showing up in the right place. That's not a sales mindset, right? You got to be evaluating and looking at that completely different. So it's been a big time education.
Sales reps
for
like
me.
Going in for the kill.
That's it. That's
right?
what they want to do. They want to have that closing conversation immediately.
Get on with the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing is, I got to live in these numbers. I got to analyze these. I want to just tweak this and then have a little patience. That's not sales. It's not sales. And companies need to know that when they're evaluating internally, if they're going to run this internally, do I have that right person? It's kind of like, the old cliche of your best sales guy usually ends up being your sales manager. Well, that doesn't always work either, right? The best NBA basketball player doesn't necessarily make the best NBA coach.
Yep.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I think that holistic view is what the salespeople are going to be moving towards, where they've got a little bit of experience in other areas and they can have those high-level conversations and some ground to stand on to challenge, old thought processes.
Although the perennial sales guy, in some respects, in today's climate, may have a long career, right?
That's why
if they're a 300 batter, a 330 batter,
Hall of Famer.
They're a Hall of Famer.
And that's why I think that's probably what's helped lead to that type of environment, is that salespeople are typically the rock star, right? If you can sell and you're bringing in customers and revenue.
Because you get the result of all the stuff that happened.
Exactly.
But when it gets to you, you better close it.
Yeah.
You better close it.
And now there's insight on all that other stuff and how it's impacting the actual sale. Yep. So you need to make sure you're taking advantage of all those opportunities by putting the right person in front of the customer at the right time.
No doubt. Hey, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so you can send me an email. You can get me at J McInturff, that's McInturff at conceptltd.com. Or you can call my desk phone. It's 330-267-0265. Or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on pretty much all social media platforms, so feel free to reach out to me.
You're open for new business?
Open for business 24/7.
Yep. I mean, you have room for a new customer?
I got some room for a few customers.
A few?
Yeah.
So they better call you quick, because you only got room for a few customers.
It's high demand.
High demand. Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming in today.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening. As you heard him, he's only got room for a couple customers. So if you're interested, call him quick. And J McInturff at conceptltd.com. Hey, thanks for listening today. If you like shows like this, let us know. Reach out to me, dharsh@danharsh.com. If you have ideas for shows, if you have topics you want to hear more of, reach out to us, dharsh@danharsh.com. If you like these shows, hit subscribe, follow us. We appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for listening today. Talk to you soon.